Welcome to A Voice and Beyond. It's Humble the Poet. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Now, you've just moved to New York. You've been telling me all about that.
Yes, I have been here now for 5 days, and it's been a roller coaster of adventure.
It's certainly it's the big city, isn't it? Everything is in overload, everything is exaggerated, everything's bigger than life.
Completely, everything. Yeah, it's a city of excess, but it's also the city of somebody described it beautifully as it's the city of unlimited second chances.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow. Do New Yorkers give second chances? Because to me, I feel like I love New Yorkers, but they have a different energy. And I feel like you wouldn't want to cross a New Yorker because they'd forgive, but they'd never forget.
Yeah, but there's so many people you'll never see them again.
Oh, I like that. So if you don't want to see anyone, you can just avoid them because there's like 50 million other people you can.
Yeah, you can just move 3 blocks away and you'll have a whole different world.
I
You'll never see
love
them
that.
again. Yeah. And I
Love.
think the only way to really upset a New Yorker is by getting in their way and slowing them down.
Oh, 100%. I mean,
That's
I was saying to you earlier, the thing that gets me is how fast they talk. And I
mm,
talk generally quite slowly, and I'm the person that likes to process information before I respond.
yeah,
And I feel the pressure when I'm talking to a New Yorker, or I feel like they're going to talk over the top of me because I'm not going fast enough for them.
completely.
Yeah. Now, Humble, you're a Canadian born rapper, spoken word artist, a poet, internationally best selling author, and you are also a former elementary school teacher.
Yeah.
You have a huge social media following with more than 2.6 million followers on YouTube alone. So, no pressure on me right now. And you have been featured on a like major media outlets all around the world. And to be honest, I first came across your work listening to one of Jay Shetty's podcasts, and I'm going,
Mm.
oh my gosh, that's Humble, and he's going to be on my show. I feel really privileged to have you here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, the pleasure is all mine. And I'm fascinated with all the stuff that you do. And I want to start off by a question that I'm sure you've been asked by a million people before. And you're in New York, you're going to be asked by 50 million more people. But you have to tell me, where does the name Humble the Poet come from?
Um, many years ago, when I was younger, I was participating in a lot of hip hop events and things online. And so the name Humble was my original screen name, and
Hmm.
and that idea comes from like in Sikh philosophy, your biggest obstacle to peace is your ego. So I was raised kind of in that philosophy. So humble kind of being a reaction to the ego, stay
Hmm.
humble. But then I participated in different, rap events and stuff like that. And then one of those events, one of the lyrics was, I am a poet and I'm humble the poet. And then the name kind of stuck off after that. And then once I started, sharing my work online publicly, but public facing, that's the name that kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that I thought of becoming like, the household name that it's becoming now.
Mm.
You don't think about it back then. It's the same way we've all had funny email names.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so I'm not lost on the fact that it's not humble to call yourself humble, but here I am stuck with the name. And it's been, 13 years now. So we're gonna keep going.
That's it. And it's a name that people are going to remember too. So, you've got that on your side. It's certainly
Yeah.
memorable. And you began your journey reciting spoken word poetry in coffee shops. And this was to impress girls. So, how did that all come about? And where did that inspiration to write poetry come from?
I grew up on hip hop music and spoken word, like slam poetry. So I think it was always in me, and it was always
Hmm.
something that I wanted to try, and I would do it kind of privately by myself, and then start doing it online. And then, yeah, as I got a little bit older and would be out in the city with my friends, that you'd walk by a coffee shop that had a poetry night, you see all the pretty girls inside. You're like, wait a minute, I can go in here and share what I got and see if it's a good icebreaker. And it definitely was. And and that was my motivation early on in the journey. I was working as a school teacher,
Yeah.
so this was kind of my social flexing, what I could do to kind of meet new women and have new experiences and be social.
So did you have trouble meeting women otherwise? Were you kind of shy or lacked the confidence and that kind of gave you that morale boost to get in there and put yourself forward?
I think for most people, I think the biggest challenge is always the breaking the
Mhm.
ice. So I think what this did was this put me in a situation to do something that it was clear I could do better than the average bear. Um, and that was enough to break the ice. It's really interesting so I guess it doesn't even, create a level of confidence to still break the ice with women. But I think what it does, it just creates an opportunity for them to come up to you after and be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I really liked that poem that you did on," and now all of a sudden the ice has been broken. So I
Yes.
think it's creating the environment for connection more so than anything else.
So is your poetry romantic usually then?
I mean, I have romantic poetry, and I have it, but I mainly talked about social issues. It was actually anything that caught my attention that I thought was really interesting. I wanted to share with the world. So, interestingly enough, I talked a lot about politics. I talked a lot about human rights. I talked a lot about that first.
Mhm.
Um, and then every now and then I would do something romantic if there was a muse or inspiration. Generally somebody whose story had ended with me, and I'm, reminiscing on them. I'd write something about them after the
Mhm.
fact, only after the fact,
Yeah.
never during.
So, as a singing teacher, because that's my background, and we have a lot of people here from the singing voice community, and you talk about like you do rap and hip hop. Do you think about what's going to come to your head before you start, or is it just something that you're in flow and it just comes out?
Oh, I mean, no, I'm definitely not the inflow type. I am the think it out, plan it out, express it, and revise it repeatedly. I think that's me a lot more.
Mm,
Uh, I think I used to rely on. I love the Stephen King quote. The difference between an amateur and professional artist is that
mm,
professional artists find inspiration every day from 9 to 5. It's kind of and the amateur waits to be inspired. And
so
I think,
true.
yeah, so I think from that concept, over the years, I really learned, because I think a lot of it would be too, is that the things that would inspire me to write were things that I was learning. And then I think maybe later on, it was things that I was feeling.
Hmm.
So I think, and I'm still on that journey now. And I think
Hmm.
that's what I'm trying to explore moving forward too, is see how I'm feeling and use the writing to work through what I'm feeling. So I think moving forward, if I start making music, which I plan to do, it'll feel a lot more like journaling than creating music for people to enjoy and dance to.
When was the last time you rapped?
I mean, the last time I released music was probably over the pandemic. I had some songs that were
Yeah.
kind of in storage that I put out. I released a full project in 2017. Um, and I had poetry projects for that as well. But I mean, I write and record, when I'm settled almost every day.
Hmm.
So, it flows through me.
Is that part of your self-care, something that you do for yourself that gives you a creative outlet, but it also makes you feel good?
Yeah, completely. I think it's the one, especially when you become I think with anybody that gets paid to do something, that kind of sucks the fun out of it. No matter what you do for a living, like I don't think it matters what it is.
Expectations. Yeah, expectations
Yes.
increase. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, that is, music is one of those things where the labor is the reward,
Hmm.
just going through it. And there's so much excitement and fun doing it and
Hmm.
not worrying about where it lives after,
Hmm.
and the amount of pride and joy I take in that. So, yes, it charges my battery. It's probably the only amount of intense work that I do that I leave feeling more energized doing.
That's when you truly know that you're in flow. We used that word before, but
Yeah.
when you really love something, it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like it fills your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
I,
I'm also learning, just like this world of being a professional, anything, this requires a ridiculous amount of energy and time towards anything,
mm,
as
yeah.
I do a whole bunch of other art, which, makes me the bulk of my income. So the music can stay a passion. But
Mm,
if I wanted to, pay my bills exclusively in music, like, it wouldn't come from making better music. It would come from being a marketer, a
yeah.
music marketer, and making sure people will hear my songs on TikTok and all that.
Mhm.
That would be exhausting.
I
So right
think it
now it's like share
is.
it for the sake of it. Yeah, right now I get and I
Yeah.
mean that's the challenge even with the book. I'm on here to promote my book, and it's this. I'm lucky that the an audience that reads books is a very critically thinking, careful, conscientious group of people, and that's a lot different than people an audience that's there for music.
Mhm.
They kind of like you for a song or a moment in a song.
Yeah, that
Some of those,
moment. Yeah, and then
exactly. So I
then they
like with
forget about you a couple of weeks later because the next song's just been released by someone else.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that's not the case with books. I think you have
No.
you live in somebody's home once they take your book, and
Mm,
you're on their shelf,
mhm.
and you're and I think I can honor that relationship a lot more. Um, and I feel like especially with the books, the effort shines. The amount of work I put into this new book, the efforts shine a lot. In
Mm.
terms of the editing, in terms of the writing, in terms of what made it, what didn't make it. I wrote more than double the amount of this book, and then had to shave away more than half of the book. And and even if you look at the book, the writing, the font is a little bit smaller than normal, just so they
Really?
could just so they could squeeze it all in. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. So
they
you,
wanted me to
yeah,
shorten it more. They wanted me to shorten it more.
yeah, but you felt that then you were going to lose part of your messaging or what was important by,
Yeah, and I mean, even like what we ended up cutting, it was just as important. What we just ended up doing was taking different themes away. Like
mm,
I had a lot of things that were science backed, like science based stuff. So we decided to just take that side of it out. Let's just take the science of it out. Let's stick with the emotions, and let's do that. And so,
mhm.
um, yeah, it was a journey, and a lot of it, and then some of it was, I had a chapter, and then what I did too, some chapters in the book are QR codes, so you can, I couldn't fit the chapter in the book, but you can scan a QR code and
What?
read it. Yeah, because I didn't
I've
want you to
never,
lose it.
I've never seen that anywhere.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay. Now we're going to talk about your books because you've
yeah.
released two books previously to this one. There
Hmm.
was Unlearn and Things Nobody Can Teach Us, and they both became international bestsellers. So there
Yeah.
must be a lot that goes on in your head. Do you find the writing process easy, or are you someone that's a slow writer, or do you get into that mode and the words just seem to appear out of nowhere and you go back a few days later and read what you've written and you go, I don't remember writing that.
W- y- Writing becomes a lot easier for me. And again, this is my third book, so
Yes.
this book
Sorry.
is the perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We haven't told our listeners the title. So it's How to Be
how to be
Loved.
loved.
Yeah, simple
Yes.
truths for going easier on yourself, embracing imperfection, and loving your way to a better life. So that is a new book that was released December last year with,
December 2022.
yeah,
Yeah, right at
with
the end of December
Hay House.
with Hay
Yeah.
House. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So I guess the way that I can best explain it is my first book was called Unlearn, and I self-published that originally,
Mm-hmm.
and it became very successful independently, and it kept growing. And then I signed with HarperCollins, and they republished it. But the writing process of that book I had done myself, and and to this day it's still selling extremely well because I feel like it's very organic. People connected with it. The second book, Things No One Else Could Teach Us, that was the first time I worked with professional editors. And what
Mm-hmm.
they really did was they took my raw talents and they really helped me refine it and kind of showed me the
Yes.
differences between an amateur and a professional. And what they really did was they gave me a lot of process, you know, teaching me structure, teaching me planning, teaching me all of that. So they didn't get in the way of my creativity. They just said, don't just wait to be inspired to write, like really plan it all out. And
Wow.
they taught me a lot. And what I did with this third book is I mixed what I could do with what they taught me.
Right. So it's
So
a balance.
it's a harmony more than a balance.
I
It's a
love that.
harmony.
It's a
Yeah,
harmony of
it's a
both
harmony.
aspects. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote from my heart, but I planned it. I planned everything out. I structured everything out. So when I felt something that I
Hmm.
wanted to write about, I would write notes, pages of notes. Then
Hmm.
those notes would turn into big sticky notes, and those sticky notes would be put on my window, and then I would put my computer on the window, right to the window, and then I would wake up first thing in the morning and immediately go to the computer, read the sticky notes, and start writing. So there would be no writer's block because I already had what the core points I needed to say. And
Hmm.
then I understood, okay, so it was really a beautiful balance of they really served as kind of the string to my kite, you know, saying, okay, look, you can
Beautiful.
go anywhere you want, but we
Hmm.
need to keep a little bit of structure. Otherwise,
Yes.
yeah. And
Yes.
that's what really made this book, super special is because I learned a lot from them
Mhm.
and then I learned how to make it my own. And
That's
that's really
incredible.
important. Yeah, so the
That's incredible.
writing the writing has gotten significantly better, and just small things like learning to get rid of the word actually. I used to write a lot and use the word actually.
Did you?
So just yeah. So now I
That's
would
an
literally
unusual word to keep writing.
and yeah, and they pointed it out. I didn't see it.
No, you don't.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so this time after finishing the book, I would like control F and look for the word actually, and then
Hmm.
sit there and be like, do I need this word every time? And I would have
Yeah.
deleted them. So I was really, as I said, like I had a lot of time to write this book because it was my pandemic project, and I had a
Hmm.
lot of time to edit this book, and I just kept going over and over and shaving away. So everything that's left is what's important and what's essential, and
Excellent.
I'm really proud of that, and it makes it very, very easy to understand. There's no big
Yes.
words. It's not
Yes.
complicated, and
And it doesn't have actually 500 times.
it does not have actually 500 times. You know what? I probably don't have any words in this book bigger than mayonnaise.
How many letters is mayonnaise?
I don't know, but that's
That's a really interesting word to use as a comparison,
well
mayonnaise. All
that's
right.
what I used to do as a teacher. That was kind of the rule. Never to speak to the kids with words bigger than mayonnaise.
I love
So
that.
yeah,
That's
so I
so
try
good.
I try to keep the reading level for this very because different people have different levels of education and you don't
Sure.
need to use big words to explain complicated
No.
ideas.
No,
Mm,
no. That's the thing I get most frustrated about in academia because in my world, I've done a PhD and written a thesis, then written an academic textbook. And
yeah,
I tell you, I don't feel comfortable in that world. I've
yeah,
got to be perfectly honest. I
yeah.
don't feel comfortable because I'm very much I like imagery. I love using adjectives. I love to express myself. And in that kind of writing, you can't. It's got
No,
to be all science based, it's all got to be well documented, evidence based. And it's not a world that I feel comfortable in. So I'm so slow writing that kind of stuff. But let's get back to your book. The book is around love.
yes.
And I know a great part of that is around self-love, and we're going to get that in a moment. But I do have many questions around love. And since knowing that I was going to interview you, I've been listening to other people talk about love. It just seems to be this thread of information that's
Mm.
coming into my life at the moment. But the word love has been Googled more than 14 billion times. And people want to know what is love. So, what's your definition of love? And have you ever been in love?
So my definition of love is peace.
Hmm.
Love is it's not getting everything, it's wanting nothing. Um, and I don't necessarily prescribe to the language of being in love. I think
Yes.
love constantly exists, and what we can do is access and realize love. and the relationships we have show us where love is, because we create pathways for that love. So,
Mm,
you know, I don't like saying ideas like I found love or I deserve love or I earned love. You know, this is not what love is. Love is the breeze, you know, and you have to open your sail to catch it, you know, and that's internal work, right?
so
So
true.
yeah. So for me, is have I been in love? Have people shown me where love is? 1000%. Have I created pathways of love between me and other people? Yes. Have I destroyed those pathways? Yes. Have I
Mm,
formed new ones? Yes, like a 1000%. And I think oftentimes, you know, love is not a complicated thing. I think the confusion, what I'm realizing and having conversations with people is the confusion is really around romantic love more than anything else, you know, because we don't have questions around the love that we have for siblings and our parents and our best friend, or a love for writing, or a love for chocolate ice cream. We don't have any questions around that. We don't need to read books about it, you
mm,
know. But we need to understand this kind of interaction where it's like, okay, how do I go from strangers to this person being the most important person in my life? And all the rules of these kind of early transactional and encounters with each other, we start to mix up with love, you know, because what we want to do is we want to earn their affection, we want to earn their adoration, we want to earn their trust, we want to earn their attention, we want to earn their approval, and we think these things are love, you know,
yes.
when with anybody else we don't do any of this. So I think what it really boils down to, and at the end of the day, you know, you're successful in the romantic realm when you can be yourself with the person. Like what you're aiming to do with that person is sit on a couch with them and watch your favorite TV show together while you're both wearing sweats and eating popcorn, you
Mm,
know. But
mm,
we assume that that requires expensive trips to Paris and jewelry and engagement rings and all these gestures, you know,
yeah.
and these things aren't love, you know, these things are facsimiles of love that we chase because we desire more love from somebody. But being seen, being, you know, being accepted for as we are, you know, this is the stuff that's love, when we feel at peace with something, you know, not all the
Mm,
pleasure and excitement that we're chasing and these sparks that we think we need to have with another person. That's not love, you know. That's
yes.
everything else. That's almost the other direction.
Yes. So, in order to feel that love with other people, and what you're saying, what I'm getting from you right now too is that we put so much pressure on love with those people that are outside of our family. We're trying to form relationships, a love relationship with somebody, or a long-term relationship with someone, a partner in life, someone that's going to stand beside us in life. We tend to put so much pressure on that. Is that because we have high expectations of what that actually is and what it needs to be? Or is it because we're trying to fill a gap, something that we feel is missing within ourselves, or we don't have enough self love, that we put the pressure on that relationship?
I think it's that plus a whole bunch of other things. I think, you know, I think the software that we have as human beings for survival has taught us that we need to gain approval of others. You
Mm,
know, when we lived in small societies, we needed to be uh, working with the community, or they would have kicked us out, and then we would have died. You know, so being people pleasers and gaining approval is a survival method. It doesn't. It's
mhm,
no longer relevant. You
mm,
know, upsetting people in your community right now will not lead to you being ostracized. You know, and as I said, we're talking about, you know, New York. You just move 3 blocks away, and you'll have a whole new community. But that, you know, that's not going to change in us anytime soon. Our biological makeup is, it takes hundreds of thousands of years to develop. So we, you know, I feel like, you know, you combine that with what media shows us, you know, when
mm,
media shows us love stories, romantic comedies, porn, all of these things, they show us a hyper normal example of what it is. They show it to us to entertain us, but we don't, what no one's realizing is that it's also informing us as to what we think it should be. Because
Exactly. Exactly.
the healthiest romantic couples you actually know in your life would not make a great TV show. They would be too peaceful and too boring, and there wouldn't be any excitement because they're at peace, you know? And there's nothing to take pictures of, there's nothing to do anything. And, so creating all this level of excitement is to get people's attention, but then that also starts to inform people that I must have that excitement in my relationships.
Mm,
And I think that's why we start to chase all of this stuff for that reason. And I think it's also, you know, this idea again, this lack of self-love isn't a whole, this incompleteness. I feel incomplete. You know, we are not incomplete individuals. Completeness isn't something you can measure a human. You can measure life as complete because when you die, your life is completed.
yes.
And your credits rolling down. But you can't measure a person as complete or enough or worthy. These ideas again have been kind of signaled to us because there's an economy around it. And nobody is, and just a very simple rule, nothing on the outside will be a solution to what you're feeling on the inside.
Mm,
The internal problems require internal solutions. And so if you don't feel good about yourself, the answer is not going to come from somebody else. There'll be a bandage, but that's not,
mm,
and stick around long enough, your old patterns are going to reemerge. And
exactly.
self-love requires you to accept yourself as you are,
Mm,
even with the big hole, with whatever you
mhm.
think that hole is.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
know,
we're all imperfectly perfect.
and that we're
In
imperfectly imperfect.
yeah,
It's a beautiful way to put it.
in our own way. And I've been married for 30 years. And
Amazing.
so we've been together 33 years, my husband and I. And I
Yeah.
mean, like, we've had our ups and downs. It's
Yeah.
not smooth sailing because we're two different people. We're sometimes one person is at a different stage than the other person. But I think for us, when times get tough, the thing that I always go back to was what was it that I first loved about this person? What were the
Mm,
qualities that I admired about this person? And we dated for 2 years before we moved in together. And it was when we had the commitment that we were going to get married that we actually started to live under the same roof.
mm,
And the excitement for me was, we would date and I would go home, then it'd be a few days or a week before I'd see him again, and I look forward to that. And I kind of feel that that set the foundation, just taking our times to gradually know each other, really set the foundations for the relationship. Do you think these days people try to hurry love? They move in together too soon. They don't take the time to actually get to know each other before they're in it, boots and all, like living with each other and having all the pressures of day-to-day life without having built that foundation.
I think absolutely. I think, to even put it simply, I think people view love as a destination and not a journey. And it's really a journey between you and another
Yes,
person that you're walking.
yes.
And and it can't be measured in time. It has to be measured in quality time. And quality time isn't watching TV with the person. You're not building a connection just by spending time with the other person. You're not building a connection just by sleeping in the same bed as the person. You build a
Mm,
connection through vulnerability. You build a connection through seeing the other person and being seen by the other person in all your glory. And that doesn't just mean naked. That means naked spiritually. That means naked mentally. That means in every capacity and accepting the person that they are and seeing it as a journey. I think very often, again, and we have economies around this. We have a whole wedding industry. And people are working
yes,
toward, yeah, they view
yes.
their wedding as like
Mm,
the they view their wedding as like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
mm,
Like it's an accomplishment to get married. Getting married is not an accomplishment. Staying married is an accomplishment.
mm.
Your
It
30
is.
year anniversary should be a lavish party, not your
Yes.
0 year wedding. You
Mm,
didn't even what other part of human society do we do that? We don't throw a party when we start high school. We throw a party when we graduate high school. We don't throw a
mm.
party starting college. We throw a party graduating college.
That
You
is
know,
so true.
it's got to be an accomplishment. Getting married is not an accomplishment. Staying married is an accomplishment. Living
Mm,
life with somebody, going, being in the trenches with them. And, and then, but right now is people are more in love with the wedding than they are with the marriage.
mm,
And they don't view it as a journey. You're starting a journey with somebody.
mhm.
Celebrate every step of the journey. But the
Yes.
biggest start of the journey is not the beginning of it. And what you're doing is you're throwing these lavish weddings and going into debt. And then, finances is a massive contributor to divorce, you know?
Yes.
So we
Absolutely.
kind of set ourselves up for this type of stuff. Whereas if we just shift our mindset, which is like, this is a journey, you know? And again, we all are, you know, abiding by these templates of society, whether written and unwritten, which is like, oh, you need to step one, meet somebody, step two, date, step three, proclaim that you're going steady or you're monogamous or
Mm,
exclusive, move in with each other, do this, do
mhm,
that. But it's like, no, like there's no schedule and timing for this. You got to work through it together. And
mm.
also, again, how are you spending your time together? Are you guys sharing first experiences, or are you guys just simply making the other person experience everything you love and then having them force you to experience everything they love? Are you guys creating mutual new experiences together? And I think there's a lot of that because that bonding gets created that way versus it being comfortable. And again, any country in the Western world or any English speaking country for that matter has ridiculously high divorce rates. And we know those are just people who
Yes.
actually got divorced. There's still a whole group in there that want to be divorced and won't.
Mm.
And it's something worth understanding when it comes to this, which is, it's not about, I don't want to view it as rushing and not, my parents are a product of arranged marriage. They're about to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary in 2024. you
I
know,
know other people in that same situation who have had very successful marriages.
complete and they're on a journey together. And they got married in a gymnasium, and they had the reception in the
Oh,
same gymnasium in Canada because they were new immigrants. They had no money, but you know their journey has spanned 5 decades, and it's a very different journey than other people would have understood. But there's still some of the recipe of a successful relationship exists within them, and one of the core ones is a common priority. When
mm.
you share priorities, not interests, you share priorities with somebody, you guys can work towards them together. And again, they were both thrown into this, and they were figuring it out as they went, and they were both in their 20s. And my dad would have been 24, my mom would have been 22,
Mm.
and there were kids doing it.
Yeah.
And
Doing their
not only
best.
doing their best. I'm not saying they had a perfect marriage. I'm not saying
Mm.
either of them, what have you, but they were doing their best. Plus, they were in a brand new country, with a different climate, with a different language, with all these things. And they were figuring it out. But I think all of that allowed them to do it. Um, and I think what we have to look at is times have changed dramatically, and we have to have a deeper understanding that, what, there may be more than one way to approach this and understand this. And again, marriage isn't some sort of higher level of love than any other love. Again, you're establishing a pathway with someone, and it's showing you where love is. And a marriage is continually refining and working on that daily with
Exactly.
somebody.
Mm.
Yeah. Whereas
Yeah.
maybe with your best friend, you guys can catch up once a month, once every 3 months, and that's enough to keep the maintenance of the pathway there. And but you still love them dearly and deeply.
Mm.
And I think for that matter, it's just really understanding that, look, like, since the beginning of humanity, as individuals, we have been taught that you have to work to keep the collective movement, the collective's priorities must matter. So if you're in a village with 100 people, you're constantly told you have to help make this village successful. I think what happened over time, especially with the industrial age, is that we don't have small villages anymore. We have large societies. But
Yes.
our large societies don't have a goal other than, you know, an economy. It's buy stuff, work, make money, buy stuff. That's what every society's actual goals are. And what they've done is they just found a million ways to make you do it without you realizing. It's like you watch your favorite television show, but that's also showing you all these advertisements, but it's also showing you this hyper normal that doesn't exist. and you participate in all of this. Now people have dream weddings before they even have a husband or a wife to be,
Yeah.
you know, and all of that is back into feeding the economy. And I think a big thing to recognize is you start to realize how much of your priorities were taught to you, because and they're not taught from some, you know, they've been morphed. You know, the knight in shining armor, you know, is a real story of, you know,
Yes.
people that lived in feudal societies, and their only option for social mobility was to join the army. And you join the army, you can come back a hero, and now your options to get married have increased a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know,
Every,
that's the
every
knight in shining
they
armor.
want the man in uniform.
They want the man in uniform, but the man in uniform had value back then because he actually went to war,
Mm.
and and he
Hmm.
survived and came home, and
Hmm.
those wars mattered. You know, like those wars were for the survival of the society or the village or the community. You know, now countries go to war over oil. You know, it's
Yeah.
you're not a hero for going to war anymore. You're an employee of a government stealing
Yeah.
somebody else's stuff,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but we still have that narrative that these people are heroes. But most countries in the world don't have to be at war ever. And now that we trade, that's not a thing. So now the knight in shining armor is the guy with the shiny belt or the shiny shoes or the nice car. And you
Mm.
know, so now it's like what you have to do to be chosen. But none of this is love. Being chosen as a prospective mate is not love. Being chosen is just being chosen, you know, and
Yes. Yes.
yeah, sure, having a
Yes.
symmetrical face or a certain body type or a certain tax bracket is going to increase that, but none of this yields more love. It just yields more being chosen, you know, and I think we need to
Yeah.
understand that. And it's not,
And
and it's also not a punishment to not play this game.
well, the problem now has been exacerbated by social media because anyone can go on social media and post a photo of themselves with a six pack or with their shiny shoes or their shiny car or with their Rolex watch or whatever it is. And with humans, isn't it that we make up our minds about somebody within seconds? We form
Hmm.
an opinion of them. So with social media now, or these dating apps, unless you have the six pack, the shiny car, the shiny shoes, the Rolex, people just go next, right? So a lot of these people who are probably really decent people are being overlooked. So how many of these people are looking for all the wrong qualities and they're bitterly disappointed or they have the wrong values based on this is what society is presenting to us as being the perfect person that we need to be with.
1000%. And it's also just again the awareness that look, everybody is pretending on social media,
Mm.
not just you, everybody, and everybody understands what it is. And this is not, this is, you know, these are platforms designed to just fracture your attention and make you upset and make you emotional. It really is. It's not, you know, people go online and, you know,
They do.
here's an experiment anybody can do. They can send a voice message to a friend of theirs, and then they can go make a video for social media and they'll instantly notice the difference in their voice. You know, I'm
Oh,
talking to you on this podcast. And again, this is, I'm supposed to be professional right now, but I'm still speaking to you like a regular person. But
mhm.
if I go on social media, hey, everybody, it's Humble the Poet. Today we're going to talk about love, you know, and everyone just they just turn into this kind of hyper real version of themselves, hyper normal. That's the right word, hyper normal version of themselves, which is like, that's not how I sound. That's not how I look. That, you know, and I'll throw on a filter to take any blemish off my face, and I'm pretending. And then when I look at everybody else's stuff, because I look at it so on such fragment, and I'm scrolling my thumb, I forget that they're not. This is not a real person I'm looking at. I'm looking at a sliver of who they actually are. I'm in the nosebleed section of their life, and I get to see what they're pretending that I need to see. Same thing with
Mm,
couples. Same thing with everything else.
mm.
Social media started. It didn't start like that. It started originally like, hey, let me catch up with my best friend and, you know, see what them and their dog are doing today. But now it's completely changed where everything is concocted, and it's really pulling on certain heartstrings and emotional and ancient feelings that we have, because now the need to be accepted can be counted in the likes and the comments and all of that,
Mm.
not understanding that that's all based off of a robot and an algorithm and software.
Yes, I hate
And
it. I
and it's
mean,
different,
yeah.
and caring about it can't matter. It really can't.
Mm.
And even as someone like me who has to make a living off getting the message out that I have something like a book to sell, it's still not worth it. The game is not worth it.
Mm, I agree. I get really annoyed when I have coffee with a girlfriend and she's crying about how miserable her life is. And then 2 seconds later, I see a post on social media, just as what you said. Oh, my life is so wonderful. And I'm
Yeah.
going, girl,
Yeah, I
what
get
are
a
you
lot of
doing?
DMs from
What are you
people.
doing?
Yeah, I get so
Yeah,
many private messages from people talking about how they're struggling, and then you look at their profiles, and then you would never know. And
exactly.
again, it's a game that is detrimental to us, and I think more and more people need to recognize that um, that if you could
Mm,
avoid being on it in every capacity, you will be so much better off. And I mean,
hmm.
the happiest person I know never got on social media because he never upgraded his phone, and he never, he had an old BlackBerry. He never got on smartphones, and then spent a good 5 years without an iPhone, and then he got an iPhone and never got on social media. By then, he
Mm,
realized that he dodged the bullet, and he's at the most peace I've ever met of anybody in my life, because none of his decisions in life have anything to do with taking a picture.
yes.
It's not for anyone else to see
Hmm.
or anywhere else to be.
So when it comes to love, and okay, there's the pressures of social media and people rushing this idea of love. what why else do we get it so wrong? Like, how important is the role modeling from our parents and their relationship and what we observed growing up as children?
I think we have to definitely become aware of our influences. I don't know if our parents can be seen as role models, but they've definitely become role models. Those who raised us become the first model of what a relationship should be, even if they're dysfunctional relationships in themselves. And, as humans, we love what's familiar more than we love what's healthy. So if our parents had a certain type of dynamic, we're going to find ourselves attracted to that dynamic because it feels like home, because it feels
Mm,
familiar. There's a
mm,
nostalgia to it. So it's really about bringing that awareness and being like, look, like, for example, my mother was significantly younger than I am today when she had me, you
yes,
know,
yes.
she's just a kid figuring things out, and making it up as she went. And to this day, she still is. And
Mm,
from that standpoint is like giving her grace for that, and also being like, look, I don't need to follow in their footsteps. They grew up in a world without Wi-Fi. Like, my parents grew up in villages. They're from a different planet than
same.
I had to grow up in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, it's really about just being aware of it. And it's not about blaming them if they weren't the best influences. It's just about recognizing their impact and then filling in those gaps yourself. So, I have a chapter in the book that says, self-love is being your own nurturing parent.
Mm,
It's not just being like I'm a victim because I had crappy parents. It's being like, okay, cool. What was missing in my upbringing? Okay, I can do that now. I have a friend, he's in his 30s now. He just recently took his inner child to the dollar store and went on a shopping spree and bought toys and candy, because he grew up homeless and he never got to do that
oh,
as a kid, and his mother struggled with addiction. So, now that
wow.
he's in a better place, he's like, all right, let's go. Let's make up for that now.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
now he's eating chocolate bars and chips and doing all the stuff that he couldn't do as a child, and he's having that moment with his inner child now and establishing that relationship with himself.
Mm.
And I think that's the important thing that we have to do here. Like, no other relationship is more important than your relationship with yourself, and your relationship with yourself is going to inform any other relationship you have.
That's really interesting. I Because people say that like, as a woman, try and marry, you end up subconsciously marrying someone that's like your father. For men, subconsciously marry someone that's like your mother. Well, my mum passed away last year,
Mm,
and I've been on quite a grieving journey for the last 12 months. Along that journey too, I've had some anger because when I was born with the job of taking care of my mum. She was having a nervous breakdown prior to me being conceived. And the doctor said to her, go and have a child so that that child will take your mind off yourself. So I was given with the job of taking care of her, all her needs. My whole childhood was taken away from me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about her. And I didn't realize till only a few months ago that some of the problems that I've had in my own relationship with my husband have been that I have had problems receiving love, because as a child, I didn't realize that I wasn't receiving love. I was the one giving and nurturing. I was like the parent. And times in my relationship, and I must admit, my husband's 11 years younger than me, that I've been taking care of him. And he has come from an upbringing where he was blamed and shamed. And so he needed nurturing. And so the two of us have kind of had this weird dynamic, and we have split up a couple of times. We have separated twice in that 30 years. So it hasn't been all smooth sailing. But in that time that we've separated, we've taken that time to work on ourselves.
Yeah.
And discover who we truly are and what matters to us and our own values. But it's interesting. My problem in my relationship has been not allowing myself to be in a place of receiving. And since I found that out, it has changed my life. I've now said, I am ready to receive. I want to be in that situation where I get to enjoy and receive. And it's absolutely changed our dynamic. And I've told my husband how I felt. I said, I now want to be receiving. And I explained why. And he's also changed. You know, so you go back to, you have to really get to know yourself, don't you? And your relationship with self, and have an understanding of what love means to you and how you perceive love.
And all the things that you thought were love that weren't, you know,
They
because
weren't.
it came attention, it came usefulness, it came all of these different things. And I think that's where this becomes a challenge, because these aren't things that you express it to those that you love very often. You know, if you think of a child, if you think of a parent, you think of whatever, they don't have to do or be anything. You know, just by, you know, hold a baby for the first time. They don't have to do or be anything. You love them regardless. They can make a mess on you immediately, and it doesn't change anything. And it's going through that process, and you know, and even hearing your story about with you and your mother, it's, you know, again, these romanticized ideas, and you know, her getting horrific advice from a doctor, being told to have a kid and get your mind off things, like, you know, start a garden, get your mind off things, like you're bringing a whole new human being into this world. And you know, I'm sure all your listeners are grateful that she still made that decision, because we all have you now. But I mean, you know, it's
I'm
not
happy
without
to
its
be here.
challenges. We're happy
Well,
to have you.
but it has messed up my relationships, not only my relationships past with partners, but also friendships.
Yeah.
It's really messed up
But
friendships.
you're moving forward with this awareness. I think there's a
100%.
beauty to that. I think there's such a beauty
Yeah.
to that, because
And it's
so
so
many of us are
liberating.
floating. Yeah, and there's so many of us are floating unconsciously through this, not even having any awareness of what's happening or how we're impacted. So I think from that standpoint, that's, you know, that's a massive requirement to kind of realize love. And you know, and this idea of receiving love is very often that, you know, the walls that we put to protect ourselves end up being a prison, and then we're keeping everybody out, including love. So it's really about letting these walls go, which is being vulnerable. Just be vulnerable at the fear and risk of getting hurt. And it's okay to get hurt. It really is okay. And from that standpoint, you know, that's the way these connections and these pathways of love, they're formed.
And in that relationship that I had with my mum, it was almost like it was a conditional love. So, is there such a thing as unconditional love? Or do you think that in a relationship, one person is always giving more than the other person, and then that tends to change over?
So I feel like if you want to have unconditional love, the unconditional love should be for love. Unconditionally believe in love, and always put your faith in love. When it comes to our interactions, I mean, we're human, and there will be conditions, and we will respond to the way people are. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, if you had somebody that loved you no matter what, and very loudly, again, that's going to really sabotage you for developing new relationships, because you're not going to have a level of accountability,
Mm.
because you've never, you think about the mama's boy, his mom showers him with praise and love, and he doesn't even deserve it. And then
Sounds
when he
like my
grows up,
brother.
he starts, yeah,
Entitled brat, even though he's
yeah.
11 years older than me and I love him dearly. But oh my gosh, talk about a mama's boy.
And here's the thing with that is, then when they get into the dating world, and now you're meeting women who have conditions because they don't know you and they're not gonna love you, all of a sudden there's a level of accountability that you're not used to. So you're gonna continually run away from somebody who wants you to step up your game. So,
Hmm.
there's this
I'm hearing
idea
you.
of, yeah, so there shouldn't be this kind of concept of unconditional love. It can be, I love you regardless, but there's conditions on how I treat you. There's conditions on me taking care of you. There's people I love dearly that I would never lend money to. I understand, So, we want to romanticize these ideas. We want to be accepted for as we are and as we should. But that doesn't mean we can just, we have to also understand that we're constantly moving, and we're moving forward or backwards. And
Yes,
we should definitely
yes,
choose forward and
yes,
make progress. You don't need
yes,
to be perfect, but you have to be making progress.
yes. And okay, so, there's differences obviously between conditions and boundaries. How
Well, what I
important,
would
yeah,
say is just standards. Just call them standards,
standards? Okay,
because they're
so,
they're about you now. They're not about the other person.
mhm. So there are things that people say this is a deal breaker. Is it important to know what our deal breakers are? Because, I mean, obviously that takes a lot of self-awareness to get to that point where you go, this is a deal breaker.
Yeah.
How important is it then to express what those deal breakers or those standards, that's, yeah, as you call them, are? And how do we best communicate when those standards have been violated?
So yeah, boundaries are your standards, right? And
Mm.
and boundaries is you protecting yourself and putting yourself first, and understanding that that's important, because you're not of any value to anybody else if you're not being taken care of. Um, the challenge with these, what we refer to as deal breakers, is that we I don't the problem is, I don't think we think about them enough. So for example, and I'm just gonna give you a funny New York story, because New York is full of hilarious stories. A girl said to me, I really like this guy, but then I found out he goes to Starbucks.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah. So I
Okay.
mean, so let's unpack it. Let's unpack it. Okay.
Okay.
Because look, she's being honest. So,
Okay.
in her eyes, I think him going to Starbucks probably represents that he is much he's not as interesting as he could be. He's kind of plugging himself in. He's just going where everybody goes. His definition of coffee is whatever Starbucks makes. Whereas she might be a little bit more hip to the coffee scene. She might be have more preferences for different types of coffee. She knows all the cool spots. And he's a little bit more, the fast food
Okay.
version of it, right? But
Okay.
what
So,
she
all
needs to
right.
do is, so it's not about Starbucks. It's really about, is he, what she's probably thinking, is he an independent thinker? Is he these type of things? Is he involved in his local community, or is it just pick, like the easiest stop? And I think, it's like somebody who eats a microwave dinner versus somebody who prepares their own dinner. Are they conscientious? Do they care? Are they eating processed food at a fast food restaurant? Because Starbucks is fast food at this point. Is he
Yes.
is he attached to familiarity? If I remember traveling, when I travel the world, my familiar thing would be a McDonald's breakfast. You can get a McDonald's breakfast in Melbourne, you can get a McDonald's breakfast in Berlin, you can get a McDonald's breakfast in India. And there's a level of consistency and familiarity there. So maybe she's like, he does it in a city like, New York, which is flooded with cafes and coffee spots. The fact that he goes to Starbucks kind of shows that he's, kind of basic. So I
Mm,
think what she really needs to do is go deeper with that. And so the deal breaker is not Starbucks. The deal breaker may be somebody who's not, as conscientious about what matters to them or not. And
mm,
I think that's no different when it comes to height. Girls want a guy of a certain height, and that becomes a deal breaker. But the question is why? I
mm,
don't want to, one of the things I've heard. I don't want to, take pictures with my man and be taller than him. And then the question is, but why? Why don't you
mm,
want to take pictures? Why? Well,
mm.
that doesn't look well. Why doesn't that look nice? And we have to keep asking why. And I
Yes.
think it's going to and what I think is going to reveal is well, I want someone that I look good with to impress other people, and then good luck. You're good luck on your journey because you care
Mm,
about other people more than what actually matters to you. Or it can go the other way, would say I want to feel safe. And right now, superficially, I just assume somebody who has a few inches on top of me will make me safer
mm,
from whatever dangers exist in the world. When the truth is, we keep going, why? Like, why is a guy who's 6'2" going to actually make you feel safe? Where do we live? Like, what do are you imagining walking down a dark alley with him and five ninjas jumping out and he's going to somehow protect you more effectively than a guy who's 5'5"?
mm.
Why is this important? And I think that when we get deeper into the whys is when we get uh the actual standards and the actual red flags. Like I can one of my red flag not my red flags or my one of my deal breakers, for example, is I will only date somebody who's in therapy. And that's me thinking I want someone who's doing their work. I want someone who is
Yes.
pursuing a journey of self-awareness. I want
Yes.
somebody who is practicing communicating. I
Mm,
want somebody who is relying on a professional to help them process the heavy emotions they have.
mm.
And I want somebody to have that level of independence. That's what that is. Now again, a valid criticism can still be that, well, to have a really good therapist requires money. So now you're also saying you need somebody in a certain tax bracket. Yeah, but I'm not saying I need her to drive a Ferrari. I'm just saying I need somebody that is prioritizing this, and they're prioritizing this over most of the other expenses that people spend money on. I'd rather her have a therapist than a Netflix account or even a
Yes.
car.
Yes.
Honestly, I don't even want to go with a car. I want to go with a therapist. So I think
Yes.
and again, as a guy who still falls for the most beautiful women, I've ignored my deal breakers many times for women who are just, I found beautiful and breathtaking. And then 2 weeks later, I suffer the consequences of them not being in therapy. And then I have to remind myself, look, you put yourself in this situation. We developed this standard and this deal breaker very conscientiously. It wasn't superficial. And now you are constantly reminded why. And I think that's what it is. So I think people should have their deal breakers. People
Yeah.
should have their red flags and their standards and their boundaries.
Mm.
They should just think deeply of them. And the best way to think deeply of them is to continually say why. Like write this down and say, I want a guy with a lot of money. Why?
I,
You know? And
yeah.
and then we start to figure things out. I think oftentimes it goes to a primal need of security, safety, reassurance. And then you start to realize, well, what actually is safety and security and reassurance in 2023? It's
Mm,
not height, you
mm,
know? And also,
mm.
what is the trade off of having somebody who makes an enormous amount of money? Most likely, they're not going to have time for you because they're too busy doing whatever job is required to make that enormous amount of money, you
Yeah, I
know?
love your deal breaker.
Yeah.
I love that you want someone who's in therapy. And what I'm understanding from that is you want someone who is investing their money on their personal growth.
Yes.
And in them, you want them to be their greatest investment.
Yes.
And it all
Yes.
comes back to what we started out on, was talking about self-love, self-worth,
Yes. Yes.
that place of value that you place on you. Because in life, we are the only people who determine our value. It's
1000%.
ourselves. It's ourselves. It's got to come from us. And that's something my husband and I are constantly doing is investing in ourselves as individuals. And then we come together as a couple and we have so much to talk about.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to start wrapping this up, Humble. You've been really generous with your time. And I know that one of the things that you talk about is that people say love is so complicated. And after listening to all of this, people would say, wow, this really is super complicated. But what advice would you give them to help them make it simple? What's the biggest thing, the biggest piece of advice you could give to somebody around love?
So love is not complicated. And if it feels complicated, then what you're dealing with is not love. So I think that's the first thing, attention, power, control, adoration, affection, success, clout. This isn't love. Um, Love is very simple, but not very easy. Love is a verb, love is work, love is service, love is sacrifice. And you have love. Everybody in this listening to this has love. They have family members, they have hobbies, they have TV shows, they have favorite foods. All of that is love. That is all love, stuff that makes you want nothing else. And we just realize this journey of courting a stranger to turn them into your soulmate is what makes things feel complicated. And we're and very often love starts with serving another person with enthusiasm. And that's no different than, if you're a grandparent and you got grandkids, to love them isn't to make them watch your favorite movie. To love them is to ask them what their favorite movie is and sit down with them and watch their favorite movie with them and ask them questions about their favorite sports and their favorite activities.
Yes.
Diving into their world, not having them dive into your world and making it about you and feeling seen and validated. It's about seeing and validating somebody else. The best way to realize more love is to love people more.
Mm,
No one will get in your way for trying to help other people and trying to service other people, trying to love other people. Love is that thing that the more you give, the more more you'll realize. You don't need to receive love. Love isn't a transaction. It's not a loan. It's a gift. Just give it away freely because you've done so much to love yourself. And loving yourself is being vulnerable with yourself. Looking at yourself in the mirror and accepting what's in front of you, saying thank you to what's in front of you.
mm,
Journal, dancing, feeling your body, praying and being honest about what you're thankful for, praying and being honest about what you want. All these self-awareness exploratory journeys are the ways that, take yourself out on a date. As I said, my friend took himself candy shopping. He took his inner child candy shopping. You can do all of this. Start this journey. And when you have a stronger relationship with yourself, you'll have so much love within you that you can share it and not worry about who's giving it back.
mm. I don't want to go down this road, but I have to ask one question about that. Are we all capable of this? I mean, what about narcissists? I feel like because I have a narcissist in my life at the moment who is creating a lot of drama, who I've decided to walk away from. It's not my husband, but I figure that that person is not capable of love. Because they have so much hatred for themselves.
No, because again, the love that we actually enjoy in life and the love that we should be striving for is that love that is so large and encompassing. It can love all those things, even the things that we consider unlovable. And these terms like narcissists, they get thrown around very often,
Yeah.
by non-medical professionals, and we have these definitions of gaslighting and all this other stuff. But the truth is, like, people are hurt, and hurt people
Yes.
hurt people.
Yes.
And most often when people, I remember as a teacher when I was working with kids, you always separate the child from their behavior. So you don't call a kid a bully. You tell the kid they're acting like a bully.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know. So
Mm-hmm.
I would, so when a child, so if a child is doing something that I don't like, I would tell them, I don't like your choice. I like you. I don't like your choice. Can we
Yeah.
crumple up these choices and throw them in the garbage and I can enjoy being with you? And That's literally, it's the same thing in these situations. As adults, life's too busy for us to be around people that are just too exhausting. So I'm not telling you to reconnect with this person in any capacity, but this person needs to, they need to go on their journey and do their work. That's what
Yeah.
it is. It's not,
Yes.
they're not incapable. They might just have a harder journey.
Yes.
And again, I can't assume people's backgrounds and where
No.
they're at.
No.
But my general belief is people are trying their best with the tools they have and the experiences that they've had. And, you know, that doesn't mean we have to accept everybody as they are. You know,
Mm,
we can love people from afar, and we can
mm.
stay away from certain people if they don't vibe and gel with us. And I think that's completely fine because everyone's on their own journey. And the way people act, they're still telling their story. And but I do believe everyone is capable of it. It's just about how much work we're
Yeah.
willing to do.
Yeah. And if you're willing as the recipient to be part of the collateral damage. But anyway, is there anything else you'd like to share about your book, Humble, in wrapping this up? Is there anything that we haven't covered up on?
No, I think, like as I said, the big bulk of the book is about loving yourself. I'm not giving people dating tips. I'm not telling people how to meet people at a bar and get their phone number. I'm not doing any of that. I'm telling people how to
Yes.
strengthen your relationship with yourself. Um, and you know, that in itself will put you in a situation where, you may or may not find a partner off of that, but I can promise you the stronger your relationship with yourself is, the less you'll care and worry about somebody else, and the less you'll worry and stress on feeling incomplete, because nobody else can complete you. There's no enoughness when it comes to a person. You are a person, that's it. And you don't measure yourself in worthiness. You can't be worthy of love. Love will love you regardless. And it's just about accessing that love and realizing that the times that you don't feel love is most likely from the walls that you built up. As I said, if love is the breeze and you can't feel it, it's because your sail is closed. The
Mm,
work you have to do isn't to find the breeze. The work you have to do is to open the sail. Open yourself up to love, because it's everywhere with everyone.
mm,
You can be vulnerable with complete strangers. You don't have to tell them, you
mm,
don't have to tell them your deep, dark secrets, but you can just be vulnerable and tell them something.
mhm,
This is only our second time meeting. You telling me that story about your mother makes me feel closer to you. And
mm,
it invites me to tell stories in a similar fashion.
mm.
And I think that's the important thing. We have to stop trying to look good and have the social media best foot forward. It doesn't serve anything. It
No.
attracts people temporarily. Let's start by being vulnerable on day one. And that, not only with others, but with ourselves. And that will start allowing love to flow between us and everything else.
Yeah. A week before I met my husband, someone asked me in the gym, "Oh, are you dating anyone at the moment?" And for years before that, like in between from when my first husband died to like there was 6 years that I was on my own, and I was a serial dater. I wasn't letting anyone get too close. I had so much baggage too, emotional baggage, of course. And I never forget saying to this person, "No, I'm not seeing anyone at the moment. And actually, I'm really happy on my own. I don't feel I need to be with anybody." And then a
Famous
week
last words.
a week later. But it was the first time in all those years I actually felt good about me. And
Yeah,
that's when I met that person. So I
amazing.
totally resonate with what you're saying.
Mm.
Okay, now Humble, you're in the process of writing another book at the moment also?
Yeah, I'm in the very early process of planning a
Okay.
book out around anxiety. Yeah.
I think that will definitely be a bestseller. I think we're living in as the most anxious society ever, ever since COVID and wars and everything else that's going on in the world. We're going to share links to all your work in the show notes. So if anyone wants to go and find you, learn more about you, go and find you on social, on to your website, to your books, and especially your latest book on love. They can find all that information in the show notes. Look, thank you so much for spending time with us on the show. It's been such a pleasure having you, and good luck with life in New York.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, take care and best of luck with all your ventures in the future.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Humble. Okay, bye.